Well,
or sniffly or something. I have no idea.
Yeah, I mean, it is what it is. If 'tis the season for the colds, I guess.
Yep. Are we starting?
Sure.
Episode 88 on the 8th. I think we're recording 88 on the 8th.
Yeah, that's a
Triple 8.
Very, like, numerologically significant thing, isn't it?
Yeah, I think so. I don't know.
Is 8 a good number? I don't know. Well, we're here, so...
in the scheme of things I've taken time to learn, numerology is not one of them.
Yeah, fair. That seems very fair.
I'm sure that there's some value in it. A lot of people study that sort of stuff, and there's some interesting correlations in ancient texts and all that sort of thing, but it seems like work I can let somebody else do and then smile at.
Yeah, work for a scholar of those texts, and maybe not for you and me.
It's officially the new year on the podcast.
Yay!
We aired an episode from last year this year, which was fun. Thanks again to Ryan coming on and talking Xenoblade with you, because I would have been out of my element.
I think, so the elements in Xenoblade, you see, there's a lot of them, and you have to... yeah, it's, I've pretty much, I mean, we'll just say it right off the top here. I've played, like, since that recording, I've played probably like 40 more hours of that game. And I think I'm in chapter 6. I think I just started chapter 6.
Yeah.
I think there are 10, but I'm not sure.
Is it, it's one of those games though that based on what you guys are talking about, it doesn't really end at end of 10. You can just keep playing forever kind of, if you wanted to.
Yeah.
And,
there's
like,
definitely
finding more...
like, yeah, there's definitely like super bosses and like quote unquote post game content, like enemies that are leveled way higher and are much stronger than the last boss.
Blades you didn't get, can you still get later maybe?
Yeah, all those blades are on the random pull system, the gacha element kind of system. But there's no stopping you from like farming the drops for that as much as you want, and especially if you do some of those like post game quote unquote, which you can definitely do before the post game if you want, like with the correct kind of setup or whatever. If you do those, you can farm them over and over and over and produce lots of those little crystals that you use to get new blades. So it's definitely like you can beat the problem with large numbers, right?
Sure.
But it's a lot of numbers.
You could be a numerologist.
Hey, there you go.
I'm uninformed about the future of that game. Have they said whether there's going to be downloadable content or?
There is a season pass. I did not purchase it, but supposedly there are new quests to be added at some point this year.
Okay.
And then I think they said new blades also later.
6 chapters in, it's going to drag you to the end for sure, right? You're loving it enough?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
The story is extremely anime, but pretty interesting, and I feel like there will be, more. Really, once you kind of unlock enough of those blades and you get enough skills going, and you can kind of get like a flow in the battle system, it's pretty fun to try and set up all these like different element combos and break the elemental resistances, and then throw the enemy up in the air and slam them back down to make them drop extra items. And there's kind of like a whole flow you can get into of various, I don't know what the word, but like various, like patterns and states that you can try to achieve in order to enrich yourself, and then, kill the enemy in one giant chain attack at the end.
Isn't that the kind of the goal of like every good RPGer? It's like, I've got to find the combo where basically every boss, I just do my setup and then I win.
Yeah. And definitely I've started encountering monsters now who are immune to some of the like basic status effects that you can use.
Yeah.
So like there's a series of status effects that you can apply that eventually lead to them getting thrown up in the air and then slammed back down. And when they slam, they drop a bunch of items. But you get guys that are immune or very resistant to like the first steps of that combo. So you need to either equip items that make them less resistant or make your stuff more accurate or whatever. There's like a...
That would happen to me in Bravely Default, where I had my one black mage / whatever the other job was, where she could poison everyone and then basically kill them all with another spell, and then you just sort of brave and kill everybody in one go. And then you get to the bosses, and that character's kind of useless. But most of the time, thankfully, her job then was to cast golden hourglass on everybody and just get them to not do anything anyway.
There's definitely, like, I think I have 5 party members now, but you can only have 3 in a party at the time.
Oh, interesting. So above and beyond having too many blades to really keep track of, you end up with more party members than you need?
Yes.
So kind of like the older Final Fantasy systems.
Yeah, but it seems like the experience is spread across the people that aren't playing as well.
Oh, good.
Or at least when I go to the inn and rest and sort of cash in if you remember, there's a system where experience is kind of held off until you rest at an inn. Like actual experience from directly killing monsters is added immediately, but if you don't do that, like experience from quests and exploring and all that stuff gets banked, and you can choose to use it or not. But when I go to rest, like all of my guys can level up, so even the ones I haven't been using.
Interesting. So is there it is.
Yep. Sorry.
No, I guess we should have mentioned everybody came into the new year and immediately was ill.
Yep.
Here and there. But
Yeah,
you're sticking it out like a trooper. I appreciate it.
Yeah, the podcast must go on at some level.
Awesome.
But so it is a friendly system in that way, and there's definitely nothing stopping you from just going around and grinding your face off and getting crazily overleveled for all the story content.
Sure.
It's in fact quite easy to do.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, so your entire break was was Xenoblade?
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, the Steam sale came and went. I got my few pennies worth of cards here and there.
I don't even bother making the badges anymore.
Oh yeah, I definitely don't. I just sell everything.
Yeah.
So that happened.
I made sure to spend my $2 to keep my community marketplace access for the year.
Yeah, there you go. Just got to buy something.
You do. Now they make you buy something so that you can still have access to the marketplace. It's so silly. But
well, I mean,
it is what it is.
Yeah, it is what it is. That's right.
It's continuing ennui glosses over the Steam sale for me nowadays.
Yeah, it's definitely not as good, or it doesn't feel as fun as it used to. That's for sure. Even with these like award categories and stuff they do, basically the most popular game in every category wins. Seems like every time.
Sure.
So like, what's the point if you didn't vote for CS:GO or Dota or whatever the most popular one in that category was?
Mm-hmm. On the Steam service.
Yeah. I mean, you get the card for voting regardless, but, there's no reason to vote your heart. You just get the card for clicking anything.
Sure. Yeah, maybe they could make some sort of investment if the one you click... Well, no, because if the one you click wins, you get something, everyone's just going to make sure to click the same thing. Right,
yeah. I don't know how you stop the system from being gamed. You probably can't.
Yeah. Well, oh well. It's sad. It's sad because it used to be such a community thing. Like the hype over what's it going to be? When's it going to be? What's going to be on sale? Everybody participate. And now...
Yeah, it's just kind of like, here are some discounts on stuff.
Here's our first We Were Gamers moment of this year.
Yeah. But, I mean, there's still a lot of great games coming out all the time. And it's hard to keep up with them. So, the farther you fall behind, eventually those discounts get good.
There was an unimaginable amount of games that came out last year.
It was like, watching and listening to some of those gaming websites' games of the year discussions and that kind of stuff.
Are you referring to the Giant Bomb one?
I do try to listen to that one, yes. Specifically, though, this year they had I think over a day's worth of podcast hours, like 25 hours worth of discussions.
They did some sort of 6 hours a day, I think.
The various categories.
Yeah.
And that's too much for me. So I picked and choose the awards I was more interested in,
sure.
And then the final overall top 10. Yeah, and it's interesting. I mean, like the games that don't make it onto those kinds of lists, are things that would be like winners in other years, right? Like the quality of games. There were so many good ones this year that it's tough to say like, okay, well, this game is number 11, so it doesn't make the list, but like, dang, that was a good game.
Yeah. Yeah, it's shocking. It's cool, and at the same time, I feel left behind.
Yeah. But I mean, I didn't play most of those games this year. I think the only one in Giant Bomb's top 10 that I played was Nier.
A lot of them were Switch and
else. Yeah.
A few indies and
yeah. Mario was on there.
Oh, you played Mario?
I've played some Mario. Yeah. I haven't finished it, but it's on there.
Right on. You did something just before the break that we didn't actually fit in on the last one because there was too much Xenoblade talk, and I want to hear about it because it's something I've never done. I've done part 1 of 2 parts of this sort of thing. Part 1 being going and sitting in a room with a book and waiting to get told to go home.
Right. We're talking about jury duty, if those of you couldn't figure that out from that description. Yeah, I have done that part many times as well myself. There's a lot of sitting around and reading a book or, playing games on my phone or what have you. Get that free Wi-Fi in the jury lounge.
Mm-hmm. Got to make sure to not go to the cafeteria for lunch because you won't actually have time to get through the line and eat. So
totally.
Leave the building and get food.
Yeah, totally. Go outside to that Chipotle or the other places down the road.
Yep.
But yeah, I was actually put on to, selected from the pool to go up to the courtroom.
Are we going to get you in trouble
Nope.
by talking about this?
Nope.
Okay. I don't want to find out that the podcast sent you to jail.
Nope. Okay. Once the verdict is decided, you can say whatever you want. You just can't talk about it beforehand. I can't make money off of it for 90 days, I think, but no one's out here offering me a book deal, so we're fine.
Okay.
So don't offer me a book deal for 70 more days.
So we have 70 days before we can go back and put ads on this episode.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's probably not going to happen. I don't know. We'll see. So yeah, I actually got sent to the courtroom, which has happened to me before, but it's infrequent.
Interesting. Okay. I've never gotten in the room.
You never been sent to the courtroom at all?
No, so you just they call your number, right? And then you have to go to a door and then wait in line at the door and then they pull you in one by one, or they sit you all down in a gaggle of people, or what?
No, so the way this one worked, at least, is they call out, in the pool, they're just sitting there and they just start rambling off people's names, and they're like, report to Department X. In this case, I believe it was Department 49, the Honorable Judge Leo Valentine Jr.
Really?
Yep. That's his
pretty
name.
Good.
He's pretty awesome. His clerk of the court also pretty awesome. Both of them easily the best part of the entire process.
All right.
Then they call people's names in order or whatever. You get there, and the clerk comes out and reads the names off in an order and assigns you a number. Whatever number you are, that's the order you're going to sit in. It seems to be randomized or whatever because I was number 3.
Ooh. Cool.
Which means that when we go into the courtroom, the first 12 people sit in the jury box.
Oh, wow. So you got to sit in the box right away.
Yeah, and that's not the first time I've gotten to do that either. In previous selections, I got into the box, but then was removed from the box during the removal process, which had a legal name that I have completely forgotten.
Jury selection?
So, nope, that's not the name. There's a French word. Anyway, those of you out there who know what that is, write in.
Oh, yeah. Podcast at wewergamers.com.
Yeah.
What is the French word for jury selection?
Please do that. It's like a legal term. I don't think it means jury selection. Anyway, so as part of that process, they then there's the first 18 or 20 people or whatever are kind of in front of the swinging gates,
Okay. So you go through the little half door that you hit your knees on?
Right, and then I'm sitting in the box, and the first 20 people are in chairs and stuff on the front of that gate, and the other people are sitting in the audience of the courtroom, in numbered order. And they make the first 20 people go through a list of questions, what's your name, what's your occupation, I forget what all the questions are. Is there a reason you think you couldn't be fair and impartial? Is there something about this particular defendant or whatever that you find would affect your judgment? And basically they're trying to see if you think you can remain impartial to both sides in the case.
Is the defendant there already? How would you know if you can be impartial to them?
He could be, yeah. The lawyer may just be there, the two lawyers, or the defendant or the claimant or whatever may be there at this time.
Yeah. Oh, okay.
And in our case, the man was, and there was a lot of the case centered around this law, specifically that I had never heard of, but it's called the Mentally Disordered Offender Law. And I guess it's some kind of label that can be applied to a person who commits a crime caused by a serious mental illness. So if the judge determines that this person committed this crime because they were mentally ill, not because they actually wanted to do it, like the illness is what did it, essentially, they can have this label applied to them, and then the state or the court, or I don't exactly figure out who, but someone can then compel this person to go to a hospital and take medications and get treatment against their will. So
had this person already been convicted of the crime and you just needed to determine whether they had done it because of the other thing?
So, no. This case was, this person had already had this, I'm going to use the acronym MDO because it's easier.
Okay.
Had this label applied to them in the past, and I guess it runs out after a year or something. And so they were trying to reapply the label to them, and I guess that requires a jury trial. Okay. It seems like a judge can make the initial determination, but maybe after that it needs, a jury. Anyway, regardless, this was a civil case, I understand, but it actually required a unanimous vote, which is weird. The judge described it as some kind of hybrid thing.
Okay.
Yeah, he used better words than that, of course. I just don't remember what they are off the top of my head here.
Okay.
And so, yeah, then they go about the process of like asking each of the two lawyers, they're not called the prosecution. I don't remember what it is. Anyway, the guy who is the like state, the DA or whatever, is asking questions about like, what do you think about, people with mental illnesses? Do you take medications for any kind of mental, you don't have to answer, of course, or you can ask to be answering in private if you think it's, too private to say in open court or whatever. They're very sensitive about that stuff. But like, are you taking medications for mental illness right now? Do you see a psychiatrist or a psychologist? These kind of questions. They're trying to understand, do you have bias towards one side or the other?
Yeah.
And, as I, went through the process, I tried to answer truthfully. You want to believe the system works, right?
I mean, don't end the day getting thrown in jail for perjury.
Yeah, they do make you swear at the beginning to, these are correct and true answers or whatever. But also they're not like going to go out and check because there's like 45 other people in the courtroom that they could use to replace you, right?
But true, it is important to participate in the process.
Yeah, and so after, they started doing this selection stuff and they let go of a few people. One person who had a PhD in neuroscience. And saw a psychologist regularly and all this stuff. They were like, you can go, ma'am. And she was like, okay, thanks. But they left another person who worked in neurology on the jury in the end. So that was weird. But anyway,
PhD is just too much.
Yeah, I don't know. Weird. She was like a brain researcher. So, but yeah, so I ended up being chosen on that jury. I sat there through the process. We broke for lunch at some point and then came back and they were like, we don't want to let anyone else go. This is fine. We all agreed these people are good and we're just going to go.
Nice.
And everyone was like, bummer. Okay. Okay. Then they dismissed everyone else and they made us swear, into the jury. Like, you are now the anointed 12 and then a 13th alternate. And then we left for the day. That was the end of the day.
Can't work too hard
at that point. Yeah. Court closes at 4:30, so that's kind of nice. And then at that point, like I went back the next day and, they give you a little badge and they tell you where to go and what time to show up. And it changed every day based on, like what kind of other lawyery stuff was happening. The judge and the clerk made like a very earnest statement at the beginning. They're like, we know it's going to seem weird that like we're telling you guys to report at 11 o'clock that day, or like the next day we're not going to have you report until, like 10, but we promise we're not just like goofing off and being lazy. There's, legal stuff that has to happen while the jury isn't present, and I can't have you here. So like, this is our attempt to, we respect your time, basically. We're not just, we don't just quit at 4:30 because, we're all like, whatever, let's go home. We really are trying to respect all of your time. No one wants to do this. And, thanks you for being a part of the process and all this stuff. Anyway, so then, we listened to some testimony over the next couple days. I think it did end up taking a total of, including the jury duty day, it took 4 days. So the jury duty day that I had the summons for, and then 3 additional days after that.
Oof.
The only reason for the last additional day was because we needed a unanimous vote, and we could not get it in the first few hours of deliberation.
Uh-huh.
And then it got to late, and they're just like, all right, you guys can go home, or stay if you want, whatever. And we were all like, nah, we're good. We're kind of at an impasse here.
Let everybody sleep on it.
Yeah, we kind of let everybody sleep on it and took the temperature of the room or whatever. And then people came back, and we were able to get everyone together on one side by, the middle of the afternoon the next day.
What's it like to work on changing minds for 12 people you've never met in your life and basically didn't talk to before you had to sit in a room?
Oh, yeah, and they super don't want you to talk to them. You're not supposed to discuss anything between the jurors before you get into that deliberation. You can talk about, life outside of the courtroom or whatever, but you are not allowed to discuss the case. They were very strict about that.
Yeah. But is it, is it just like...
So I ended up getting appointed the foreman of the jury. Not that really meant anything.
How does that happen? Wait.
I sat down at the end of the table, and we voted, and no one wanted to vote no one wanted to do it. And I was like, let's get this over with.
Oh, gosh.
I mean, it was everyone was staring, the bailiff comes in and goes, okay, you guys have to pick a 4-person. You guys can discuss that among yourselves. I'll be outside. Let me know if you guys need anything. Bye. And then he leaves, and we're all just sitting there staring at each other for a good minute. No one says anything. And I'm just like, all right, I'll do it. Let's just get this over with. Come on.
Yeah.
I was hopeful that we could just get it done with that first day, but not to be.
What is that responsibility of that? Just basically managing the room?
Yeah. So it's more I'm the debate moderator essentially, and I have to get everyone to speak their mind because we need a unanimous opinion. So everyone has to say something.
Mm-hmm.
And if they're, one way or the other way, they need to have support for their arguments or whatever in the evidence, right? You can't use any arguments outside of the evidence or anything that isn't within, the scope of what they allowed us.
Yeah. I feel like you were built to be a jury 4-person.
The actual 4-person, other than being the moderator, doesn't do that much. Other than at the end, you write down I forget. I think we were writing true or false on a piece of paper, and then I sign it, and that's it.
Okay, but at the same time, your description of making sure everybody had operated within a certain amount of parameters, I feel like that's definitely something that you would be good at.
It was definitely a lot of just sitting and listening to everyone talk, and then pointing to people who hadn't said anything in a long time, or who were just sitting there quietly or whatever, and saying okay, what do you think? All right, we haven't heard from you. What do you think? And kind of going around the room like that. Yeah, so it was an interesting process. I don't know that I particularly enjoyed it. I think it would definitely be, if you've never done it, it definitely is something to do. It's interesting to see the system work, right?
Yeah.
But I don't know that I would want to be involved, because at some point it's a big decision. You're just basically saying that hey, this person can't be in control of themselves. They're not mentally there enough to make those decisions. We have to have someone else do it for them, or they're going to be dangerous.
Mm-hmm. It's a lot of weight to put on.
Yeah. So, it was a tough, tough room. We did eventually come to a conclusion, but it was, like I said, it took, I think off the bat, we were we tried to avoid voting because you need to come to a unanimous conclusion anyway. So what's the point of taking a vote?
Mm-hmm.
But we did end up taking a vote at some point at the end of the first day, and I think it was 9-3 or 8-4. I don't remember. Something like that. And then we were like, okay, well, everyone, think about what everyone said and, remember the evidence, and we'll come back tomorrow and do some more. And then we did some more. And, I think people were persuaded. It's very difficult to get people to keep an open mind about things.
That's the theme of the entirety of last year, I think.
Yeah. So, you don't want to have any preconceived notions, right? And that's the thing they said going into the deliberations, hey, only this evidence is what you can consider. Anything outside of this is not really anything that's, to be considered as part of what you guys are doing. So
sure.
It was an interesting process for sure. And at the end of it all, the judge and the clerk gave us a nice little certificate that says, appreciation for doing your civic duty or whatever, signed by the judge and the clerk.
Oh, that's awesome.
At the end, brought out to us by the bailiff or whomever. That was pretty fun. So I have his signature.
What'd you spend that sweet jury duty money on?
Yeah, that hot $15 a day. Yeah, I don't know. It just evaporated immediately. It was like, it's nothing. But the nice thing is that at least my company does pay for some of those days. So I think I will have been paid my salary for at least some of those days.
I would imagine up to a week is normal.
I don't know. They changed their rules not this time, but the previous time I had come in. I was on a case that was a lot longer than this one was slated to be. Mm-hmm. The judge can kind of like guess at how long the case is going to be at the beginning. And he's like, yeah, this one's probably going to be pretty long. I want to make sure anyone who gets selected for this jury is going to be able to be paid for the entire time they're on there, because it's not going to be, you're going to have a hardship if you don't. Because it was probably going to be, over a week.
Nice.
And so
that's nice of the judge to worry about that.
Yeah. Well, it's a big consideration, because that is one of the excuses you can say, like, hey, this is financially destructive to me. Like, I can't spend this time here. Which,
unfortunately, if you really drill into that logic, might mean that people are not getting a jury of their peers.
Yeah, it's tough, They definitely go through like that selection process, and they're trying to get a variety of people, men and women, all sorts of education ranges, all sorts of racial backgrounds and whatever, into that jury box. So they're definitely the lawyers are on the lookout for that stuff, for sure. And then obviously they want people who you would think they would want people who would favor their side, but actually all of them said that we just want people who are impartial. The impartiality is the only thing we care about. Mm-hmm. So I don't know how truthful that is or not, but whatever. That's what they said.
I wonder if it's now so commonplace to be able to pick out juries that were misselected that they don't want their case thrown out.
Yeah, I don't know. And it's actually the process is kind of maddening, because when you get in there, you're like, there's a bunch of information they aren't allowing us to look at. Like, we don't know all the circumstances surrounding a bunch of these events. Mm-hmm. Like, we're only allowed to consider this one piece of paper that it was signed by the guy at a doctor that says he refused his medication or whatever. Mm-hmm. We're not allowed to ask, like, what was the context? Why? Like, what he wrote on that paper is all we can go off of.
Because at some point they had an evidentiary meeting, which is one of the things you guys weren't there for, that said what was and wasn't allowed to be in front of you.
Right. And this is Exhibit 5 or whatever, and you get to read this one, and you don't get to know the facts of this incident that happened on, May 30th or whatever. I'm making it up. I don't know. So like, they're like, oh, there was this incident on May 30th. Here is what both lawyers have agreed to say about that incident. And that's all you get to know. Like, you don't get to know the actual facts of what happened. And you don't get to know, like all of the, they'll give you the law and all that stuff, but you don't get to know, kind of all the circumstances. Like, what happens if we rule one way or the other way? Where does he go next? We don't get to know that. So it's kind of frustrating, because you're like, well, I think, if this person is dangerous, like, I don't want him to be released into the community because, like, he's dangerous. So that seems bad. But what if his danger, like, what if he's only dangerous when people are trying to force him to take meds? And then, like, well, no one's going to force him to take meds out there. So, like, maybe he'll just be fine. And like, you can't consider that stuff because it's outside of the scope of what the evidence says.
Yeah.
It can be frustrating.
I feel like you definitely should be able to, as a jury, say we want more context on X, Y, Z. I understand not giving you the idea of, like, consequences, like what your consequences are, because people would vote the conscience of the consequence rather than the conscience of the law.
Sure, and I can definitely see that. But it can be frustrating. Like,
Absolutely.
You want to know. Like, you want to know.
Yeah. Oof.
But so it was tough. I would prefer not to do it again.
You don't walk out of there feeling like Judge Dredd, huh?
Not really. Especially since I don't know. Anyway, it's very hard to listen to, a bunch of doctors testify or, psychologists and just say yes, you should do this. No, you shouldn't do this. In my opinion, this is what you should do. My opinion, this is what you should do. And then you have to pick and choose who you believe and what parts of it you don't. It's like, oh, well, these people only interviewed him for an hour. What do they know?
Mm-hmm.
It's tough.
Well, thank you.
Yeah, that was my jury duty adventure.
Glad you got a certificate. It seems like
I posted that on social media. Check that out. And a hot $45 check, which is already gone.
Yep. Mm-hmm. And the burgeoning self-doubt of having done your civic duty.
Right. Yeah. In the end of the day, I felt like I did we ended up doing what I thought was right. So
good.
Yep.
I did not have any major life altering choices to make over my break, really. I did try out some DS games.
Oh, that's cool. What'd you check?
Well, I decided that I'm going to focus on one backlog.
Okay.
So rather than the PC backlog and the Wii U backlog and the PlayStation 3 backlog and all these scattered decisions,
mm-hmm.
I'm going to hit one of them hard.
So that seems like a reasonable plan.
Yeah. So I popped open Advance Wars DS.
Nice.
Have you played that game?
I don't think that I have.
Okay.
But maybe I played an older version of it.
There was an Advance Wars and an Advance Wars 2 on the Game Boy Advance.
Yeah, I may have emulated one of those at one point.
Those games would have been good on the Game Boy Advance. It feels like the DS version was a little bit too much of a Game Boy game and not enough of a DS game.
Mm-hmm.
I tried for a while, and I've never really been one to quit on games too early, but I got about halfway through the single-player missions and then said, I kind of get what this is, and it's not changing, really. There was an early mission in the game. So the premise is that you have a commander, right? And two sides. There's the good guys and the bad guys. And
sure.
Your commander has special abilities and special effects, and they get more as they level up. And you're able to like buy stuff for them, and
yeah, so kind of like a tactical combat kind of thing. Right?
Yeah, and you have a map that you play on that's it's gridded out, and in the map is like factories you can take over to build more units, and missile silos, and water.
Little Fire Emblem-y there, kind of. So like your tank is probably better than their infantry, which is probably better than, I don't know, planes. I'm guessing.
Yeah, everything's strong against something else, and each different one has a different type of attack. And if some of them, if they attack certain unit types, they're better, but if they get attacked, they're not as good. And that's okay. I don't know how it stacks up against Fire Emblem. If I had to like know in like the Jeanne d'Arc style, Final Fantasy Tactics style, right, where you know each person kind of like can hang, right? Like, oh, maybe this isn't the best place to put this character, but you know, he's tough. He can take a few hits, and then my other guy can get over there. And if I move this guy over here, it'll drag his units over there, and then I can kind of sweep across with my flying unit, you know, something like that.
Right.
This is a little bit more like it's a little more smashy, just like smash your units into their units. There's the grids are very small, and you can't really like prep to be in good positioning as well as some of those other games. So my flying unit can go over here and take out that unit because it's really good against that unit, but like I can't get to a place where I can take him out and then still be out of range of the thing that's just going to kill my flying unit the turn after that.
Right. So you're kind of forced to commit a little bit more, maybe.
Sure. So it's just like tit for tat. And then your StarCraft skills come in because there's buildings you can take over that give you more money, and then you can use that money at the factories. So the computer doesn't really focus on that sort of stuff, and if you do, then you kind of win the game because you can outproduce units.
Gotcha. So it's a little bit of like, I mean, this is war, son. You have to really got to get into that grinder and push them back.
So the game has this like bubbly atmosphere at the same time. Like the lead general that you have is wearing like a Walkman and headphones, and he's like, I'm gonna rock this fight and all that sort of stuff. And then you get into the missions and it's like a meat grinder of people dying.
Little juxtaposition there.
Like, okay, I don't. There is a different version of this game called Days of Ruin where they took that out and put in a different type of storyline, which was way grittier. But the like red versus blue, because like my tanks were red and their tanks were blue.
Gotcha.
The red versus blue aspect of it is still there, and the maps are all still like bubbly colors, and so it felt a little off-putting in that way. And I just kind of didn't sit perfectly with me, because at a certain point I was like, well, as long as I manage my macro, I'll never lose a mission. And the interesting things they had done at the beginning of the game, they keep changing each mission has like a little story behind why you're doing it. And therefore you kind of lose the cool stuff. Like I did this one mission early on where one of my two generals, because you get two and you can like switch between them at a certain point. You start with one, and that's how the games were up until this third game, I think. And then this game, they added the dual commanders where you could switch between them and do all these cool things. And the mission, they introduced that. They do this awesome thing where, like, okay, there's two combat zones. There's one on your top screen and one on your bottom screen. And, like, you send units to the top screen to help that commander up there in the sky. And all you can send is air units. So, like, you have to hold off the ground forces while your factories make air units to send up to the top so that and if you win on the top, you get your second commander down on the bottom, which makes you stronger. And if they win on the top, then they get theirs. You know what I mean?
Right, sure.
That
you're kind of trying to balance the I need to defend down here, but I need to build things.
Yeah, exactly. And that was cool. And they did that for 2 missions, and then it was over. And then it was just like 2 commanders versus 2 commanders. It was like, well, come on, man. That was like that was awesome, having the 2 combat zones. And anyway.
Well, maybe the mechanics get mixed up again as you get later in the game.
It probably does. But like at a certain point, each mission was like, win this in 15 turns. And I was like, okay, well, I know I'm going to win this by turn 12. It's just make enough tanks and send them that direction. So it kind of got a little bit boring. So I let that one go. Well,
I think that's fair.
Yeah.
If you decide you're not really into it, you can do that. Let it go.
I think the backlog has finally gotten deep enough that I'm going to start letting things go. Just, I played half of it. I'm good. I
Commendable.
So I did start another one.
Awesome. And what was that?
Professor Layton. Do you know what this is? This is an old series.
Do. Right. There are quite a few of them.
I think 7 mainline ones. It's a puzzle series, right? I'm sure like everybody out there is going, yeah, I roll. We've all played these. Not all of us, okay? Some of us didn't play them yet. It's just brain teasers, basically. And then like he's a detective trying to figure out what happened to this person, or where the golden egg is so that somebody can get their inheritance or whatever. And then the town has all this sort of mysteries in it that you need to figure out. Somebody gets murdered and a whole bunch of other stuff while you're trying to figure out where this inheritance is hidden.
And the thief left the puzzle where you have to have so many matchsticks to make so many different lines.
You got it. You got it right. Yeah.
I know how brain teasers work.
Yeah. No, the brain teasers are interesting. It definitely rejuvenated my, read it 3 times, understand the puzzle,
Yeah, one of those, sometimes it's a thing they didn't say that is the key piece of information or whatever.
Or the thing they said is the answer.
Yeah.
I don't know if I would play deeper than one game in the series. I guess maybe they're good to pick up cheap if you want something to do in the background, but I feel like phone games have maybe taken over this type of game.
You didn't think the brain teasers were, significantly tougher because they were in 3D or on the screens like that or whatever?
I'm playing an earlier one, so maybe the later ones are more integral to being on the 3DS or something.
Yeah. I wonder if they are actually on phones. Like, it seems like that's something you could do, right? If it's just like,
Yeah, I know those Ace Attorneys went to the phone. Like the Ace Attorney
people like
games,
those also.
Yeah, people really like those too. They're good games. This is a good game. I'll definitely play it through. It's definitely simple and sort of in a way, it's like the Picross for me, where I got really into Picross for like a month.
Yeah, nice. Looks like a fun thing to do to relax and kind of let your mind think about stuff.
It felt right for the end of the year. Just turn everything off. Just do brain puzzles. Don't worry about it. 2018 starting. Relax.
Yeah, nice.
So you'll be hearing more DS games from me on upcoming shows, I'm sure.
Cool. I can't wait. That sounds awesome.
As we work through the backlog. Yeah, right on, man. Well, I think it's going to be a short pod today. We got a little bit of housekeeping to do afterwards, so I want to make sure we have enough time to do that. Any updates for the peeps?
They can follow us in the usual places: Facebook, Twitter, Instagram at We Were Gamers.
Yeah.
Check those out. Send in emails to the podcast, as we said before, podcast@weweregamers.com. We're in there. Give us ratings on iTunes and Google Play and all wherever fine podcasts are distributed.
Don't bother with less than 5, right? I mean,
the best. Only the best ratings.
Yeah. No, it's all good. And Happy New Year officially, everybody.
Yeah, Happy New Year. Enjoy 2018.